Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me on the feed? Everyone who's on the feed, welcome. Hello? YP, good to see you. I don't know you, I think. Okay, thank you. Oh, you're Julia, I think. That's cool. Welcome. Thank you everyone for tuning in to my little tutorial today. I am going to do my best to give a brief introduction to writing in general and a little bit, funneling a little bit to as it relates to writing professionally. But as I found as I was putting together this session, there is actually a lot of overlap, and you really want to start at the start if you want to learn to write well, which everyone has to learn. Like there are people who say they're gifted. No. Everyone practices, and especially with writing, you have to practice a lot.
Just remember to switch to PowerPoint in a second.
All right. Yeah, all right. Oh yes, I could have switched myself to full screen the whole time, but I didn't. Here's me, full screen. Not particularly informational, but nonetheless. Let's go to the sheets. Writing part 1. Brief overview. First, we're going to do some general pointers, general things to consider as you are writing, because there's actually a lot of imagination that goes into writing, even without considering what you're supposed to be writing about. There's like a process that I would like for you to engage in order to improve your writing style. So we're going to consider who the reader is, how they think, and what makes writing good, like what separates good writing from bad writing, which isn't exactly an exact science. It's more of an art. So anything I say today is simply my opinion. You can make up your own rules as they make sense to you, as long as they are based on a logic that you can explain to yourself. That's all fine. But if you can't, please help yourself to what I'm about to explain. Finally, we're going to look at textual, like graphic text, which isn't to say like dirty, but more like how it physically looks on a page, because that turns out is quite relevant. And we're going to look at a few tricks to help know which words to choose and when. And as usual, questions are always welcome. If there are any questions already, I don't think so. I think we can move on. I will take a brief look at the chat. There are no questions there either. And we will continue then to my first sheet, which is a little bit facetious. And it's fine if you don't know what facetious means. It's just a few tips that I found that are written sort of sarcastically, ironically, you might even say, that illustrate a few common writing errors. So avoid alliteration always. You can hear why that's something that you should only apply in very sparse cases. Like even when you're reading on a page, you're sounding it in your head, and the shape of those sounds means something. So if you want to write in fluency, as I would like for everyone to do, then alliteration is best used very, very sparse. So avoid alliteration always. What stands out about that? Andre, too, is being facetious. Alliteration is when you repeat a vowel sound several times in a row. So that would be avoid alliteration always would be an example of that. Is that A? Okay. Yeah. So like if you catch yourself doing that, either it's like hilariously on point and you can leave it, or it's just there. And if it's just there, then it's sort of distracting. That's kind of how you decide how to deal with alliteration in general. Like it can serve a very functional purpose, but like if it doesn't, then it should go. And that's basically the main through line, I think, of the presentation I want to give today, which is like, if it does not serve a purpose, it must go. I will repeat that several times. It'll be in the sheets. It'll be a whole thing. I don't think I have to go into all of these as deeply as we just have, or we might, as Andre may prefer. Prepositions are not words to end sentences with. What's complicated about that? Why is that annoying? I can't even fully explain it. That's the thing. I'm going to open the second mic. I'm going to hand it to my dude Alexandre, who is French.
Yeah.
There you go. Please go ahead. You don't have to be right. Just tell me what you think.
Okay.
Go ahead. The floor is yours. Prepositions are not words to end sentences with. I really sprung it on you because you're French, so you're not a native English speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's complicated for me, but now that's cool.
Now it doesn't stand out to you as off.
Yeah, for me, that's I didn't see the last class before.
Oh, but this is the first writing session.
Ah, that's the first.
There's no mistakes. Don't be afraid. There's no mistakes.
Okay.
The point is, like, what we're doing right now is going over these errors in this example, and we're going to see what about them is somehow incorrect.
Okay.
And in this case, prepositions are not words to end sentences with. We are ending in the word with. And that's not done. Why do you think that's not done?
I need to translate preposition.
Can I do that for you quickly? Because I would like to give you a definition, but I can't just whip that out as I... I'm not a native English speaker. But in this case, even without looking it up, we know one example of a preposition which is given in the sentence, namely the word with. Prepositions are not words to end sentences with.
Because you need to end some sentence with another word of with, like to end your sentence, you need to add some information.
Exactly.
Question.
Exactly. You need to put information at the end, not a reference to something else.
Yeah.
A preposition, above all else, even without looking it up, is a connective tissue word between two other terms. So you're connecting with, like, I'm going with Andre. So that's me and Andre. With is the connecting term.
Okay.
So if you end a sentence with that, that's a weird thing to do. You shouldn't, ideally, you might consider, you don't have to, you can do it differently. Let's see, a preposition is no way to end a sentence. You cannot end a sentence with a proposition.
Okay.
Huh?
I understand now. Okay.
See?
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah,
Sorry
yeah.
to put you on the spot there, bro. Let me take the mic so that I don't confuse our listeners too much with feedback. Put this boy out again. Thank you. Is this a good pace? All right. The passive voice is to be avoided. Why is that? Two of my other co-viewers.
Too complex, you can simplify it, say
You might.
passive voice or
Uh-huh.
You should avoid the passive voice.
You should avoid the passive voice. Okay, but that's given in the sentence. That's not why. Andre just mentioned that it's a little bit too long, which I like, right? My key word for today is efficiency. So that is already a very good reason not to use the passive voice because it usually extends a few words, adds a few words. You avoid passive because the reader, the briefest way to explain it, even though it's a little bit like holistic, as you read, as anyone reads, human beings read, they imagine what they are doing. And unless something is explicitly in the past, and you need the reader to understand, no, this is the past, I'm going to take you back to the present, there's no other purpose for the passive voice, right? Or maybe if you're writing a manual. I'm sure that there's examples in which it applies. My point is that it rarely applies in academic reading, and if it does, you will understand why there is no way around it. But if you can avoid it, you should. Because as a reader, you are imagining what's going on around you, and you are thus imagining what you are reading, and it's just more engaging to read in an active condition, right? What's happening in the now, or in the future, either, is clearly preferable to humanize than what is in the past. Can I move on?
Yes,
All right.
we've got plenty to cover.
I have many, many things to cover. Avoid cliches like the plague, they are old hat. Clearly, obvious, huh? Okay. Again, even not just because they're lame, but because they're inefficient. It is wrong to ever split an infinitive. I can't even rephrase that properly using the word even. It is simply wrong to split an infinitive. Don't worry about that too much. That's kind of advanced. Writers should never generalize. Andre?
Yes.
Andre, writers, speakers, authors, people who give presentations, it's very, very unusual to give a generalization unless there is a specific, obvious purpose for it. Unless there is a really, really clear goal as to why you must say all X's are like Y. You should avoid that if you can, because within it entails the assumption that you know all items of X. And that is simply not true. Usually, it's very rarely true that you really, really know everything about a given topic. And this is not true for like just me or you, but it's everyone, right? That's just how concepts kind of work. All right. Be consistent, obvious. And this especially goes for academic writing, and therefore also grant writing. This is something that they very much have in common. What you find when you write a grant, when you apply for a grant, is that there is a given structure. And just like on a test in high school, you need to read the assignment calmly and completely. Because if you do not, you will miss the directive in the form. And every form has within it particular directives that you can't expect. They make up rules, these grant institutions, that are not obvious necessarily, or maybe when you've written 50 grants, then you know exactly what to expect and what turns to take. But if you don't, please, 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 read the assignment well. Write down to the character limit, all right? Because there's going to be, especially in business, and this is very clever, there's a reason for that, they limit the amount of text that you're able to deliver per section of your grant application. This is simply a fact. You cannot deliver 60 pages of text when 4 are requested. They will not consider it. And they shouldn't, because I will explain why. Because you can do it in less, right? Any good idea can basically be explained in a single paragraph. If you're good enough, you can do it. Of course, grants request additional information about this particular idea, this particular innovation, right? Especially if its innovation is going to be a little bit vague. But the essence is that there is one clear definition of what you're trying to do, and all other requests within the grant information, within the grant application, follow from that. If you manage to read calmly and correctly, and that may take 4, 5, 6 readings, that's not unique to you, that's everyone, then you will for sure be able to deliver a product that is of higher quality than if you didn't do that. And the higher the product you deliver to me, your checker, the better feedback I can provide, right? Like the more I can think, the more time I have to think about what you wrote, what it means, the more detail I can add, the more critical questions I can ask about the topic rather than the writing itself, which I'm happy to do, don't get me wrong. But the more we can focus on the meaning rather than the language itself, the better the product will be. All right, so that's consistency, right? Let's see. Don't use more words than necessary. It is highly superfluous. Efficiency, please. Be more or less specific. I love that one. Specificity, of course, the spice of life, right? If you can't make it clear to someone who is reading what you wrote, then if they cannot understand it, they cannot ask questions about it. If they can't understand it, they can't award money to it. Why would they? Like, that would be literally the least intelligent thing for them to do if they can't understand what they're reading. If it is not, it should be completely untrivial, right? It should be concise, effective, and compact. Finally, an exaggeration is a billion times worse than an understatement. I love that whoever wrote this list used billion, because I've encountered the word billion quite a few times in checking different grant applications for AppsForce, and it's almost never been applicable. Again, unless you are literally referencing a billion of something, there is no good reason to use a billion. No, there's nothing else to say about that. Again, it's very similar to generalizations. It's just something that you can easily indicate as like, okay, this is like a trained reader will not respond to a generalization or an exaggeration, or for that matter, an understatement, because they are trained readers, right? So they understand that that is actually something that they themselves need to edit in their brain. That's what I need to do when I encounter someone using the term a billion, right? Because unless it's literally a billion, it's never that. All right, now to the stuff I prepared. Right? That'll hopefully be a little bit quicker. All right, so as I've mentioned before, your writing should be compact, efficient, and if you can make it sexy, do it. Not sexy in an erotic way, but like in a salacious, in a gripping kind of way, in an engaging kind of way, in an active kind of way. Oh, that's actually quite clever. I like that I did that. As I mentioned before, like business grants and academic grants are similar, but not quite the same. If you're an academic writer, you've been very, very well trained to look for statements of fact, right? Or statements that you can at least back up with a source, someone else who's claimed what you've said before. And it's taken me a very, very, very long time to sort of undo myself from that sort of knee-jerk need. Because of course, if you are an academic writer, and I don't know if you have ever had to produce an APA paper for university.
No, I knew my.
Okay. No, don't worry. I was just asking, like, for school, have you ever produced like a paper with citations, with a source list?
A source list about a program?
For instance. Well, I guess that might be a different source list, isn't it, Andre? That's a different source list. Doesn't matter. Again, that's my fault. My point is that if you produce a paper for an academic institution, then you will have to apply some sort of structure by which you organize your references. In my case, in the case of psychology and a lot of medical stuff, we use APA, and there is a rule that goes to the character about how you exactly format your sources and like how, like this is a mortal issue. If you do this wrong, you will lose your credibility as an academic. That is not what we are doing. That's wonderful. We don't have to deal with that so much at all. In fact, usually business grants don't want a citation list at all. They don't even care. And still to this day, I get a little bit like, I get nervous. I get nervous when I have to let go of a claim that is not really explained, apart from, you know, the fact that we claimed it based on our logic. But that is indeed occasionally possible. That is permissible. In fact, I have seen it work. As you might notice, the final point of this sheet is that Andre has indeed done it. I've seen the man do it. I've seen him write grant applications that I thought were not of particularly high quality, and yet the idea was enough for it to be seen through. This means business grants, academic grants, not the same. A business grant is more about the idea. The idea has to be clear, it has to be concise, it has to be efficient, it has to be well explained. If you can do that, it doesn't matter if you present sources. They will ask for them if they want them. But they don't, usually, at least not in my experience. Therefore, business people and academics are not the same thing. Many business people used to be academics, but it's simply not their job right now. And I think all of them appreciate concise, clear, well-considered writing. All right, next frame. Who has got the time? Let's spend a little bit of time considering who is actually going to read what we are going to produce. Writing always has a goal. Any writing, right? Artistic, academic, business-wise, if you're writing a website, any content has a purpose. And the more clear that purpose is, the more concise and effective you can write what you're supposed to be writing. So, therefore, writing is also an analytic skill. It is remarkably similar, like it says again on the bottom, to programming. It is really like solving a puzzle. It's like looping, and it loops back into itself even as you progress. It's also something that you clearly get better and more efficient at as you train, as several people on the stream might be aware of. That there's quite the learning curve. And that's okay, you have to give yourself that time. Yeah, what I think is particularly relevant is that writing is an act of empathy, because what does it mean to be clear? And it seems to be quite a subjective thing, isn't it? Like, what's clear to me is not going to necessarily be clear to another person, right? Not everyone knows the same thing, so how could you possibly anticipate, right, what that other person is expecting? But of course, we do know a few things about them. And I think the most important thing, the most relevant thing, is that they are human. Human beings have very, very short attention spans. I'll just go to this sheet because that makes more sense now. A reader is like a goldfish. They have an extremely short attention span. Just consider for yourself how long you spend reading something online. When you're on a web page, like, the information has to be delivered now or I'm gone. You know why? Because the internet is the most stimulating thing in the world. It is preferred even by many to masturbation. It is literally the biggest deal. It is the biggest distractor you could ever imagine. So whatever you are writing is competing with that. That is a fact that you have to keep in mind. If you cannot engage the reader sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, they will be lost. They will go do something else. You will go do something else. You've read bad web pages that didn't deliver the information you were looking for fast enough. Doesn't mean that the information you were looking for wasn't there, just that it was sort of sauced between other bits that you have to sort of plow through in order to get to the thing that you want. If you can at all prevent that, you should. So the reader cannot think for you, but you have to think for them. You have to imagine, this is what I was saying before, you have to really physically imagine, especially early on in writing, that you are the other person, that you do not know what you know, that you're like talking to a Martian who doesn't really, maybe in the case of a business grant, you can assume that they have some knowledge of what an MVP is or what the word innovation means. You don't have to explain the very basics, but the simplest vernacular is usually the most effective. Even for people who are very, very skilled at reading. I myself prefer simple language to complicated language because it is easier to understand. And it is not necessarily more efficient to use a more complicated word. If I have to read a 6-syllable word, that takes me about as long as it does to read a simpler sentence. So maybe that's something to consider. But not for you, that's actually more for me. I'm a complicated word user when I shouldn't. So the point of this sheet is to at least imagine that you are the reader, and as closely and literally as you can. I think that's a very valuable exercise to perform and to keep in mind. So your job as a writer, and this is true, is to have a very clear understanding of what you are doing, to wrap that in the context of language, and put that, deploy that, if you're a programmer, you might deploy it, into the mind of a person that you don't know. So like that's not necessarily an easy thing to do. Nobody expects you to do that right straight away. Even I mess that up regularly, right? That's why we have like proofreading by other people. It's very important that you highlight what about a certain thing you don't understand if a phrasing is such that you can't quite put it into what it's supposed to mean. That's a normal thing to happen. All right. So indeed, in a perfect world, the reader understands exactly what you mean and nothing else. The thing that you deliver should be complete, like conclusive, as they say in academia, conclusive and exhaustive. That means that everything that is supposed to be in it, and everything that is not. So that you can perfectly focus on the task at hand. Any questions? No? All right. So that means you have to understand exactly what you are trying to say, even, and I put this very seriously, even if that means you have to take a step back and sit like this for what might be 5 minutes. Just think about what you're trying to say. And once you have an idea of that, or maybe but it doesn't have to be perfect, right? But like once you have an idea of that, then you have something that you can write down. And what you write down will not be correct, and that's fine. You have to come back to it. Writing cannot be a one-shot game. It can't. It's just the art doesn't work that way. So you have to, everyone has to start somewhere. You have to start with an idea, and the more clear that idea is, the easier it will produce itself into, in our case, a grant. But it is all about the communication of ideas and about understanding that the reader is a human being, right? Just like you, they get distracted, they're tired sometimes, they're a little bit hungry while they're supposed to be reading, this is a deadline, whatever. Make it as easy for them as you possibly can. And there's a few tricks, there's a few very, very important tricks to do that, that if we all do that, then it's already better. It's already, like for real, it'll all be really, really better. Okay, so, goldfish brain. Moving on. Brevity is the soul of wit. I like to put a H in wit, because that gives it a little whip moment. That's Shakespeare, you know. That's not exactly no one. That's one of the greatest writers to ever do the thing. Brevity is the soul of wit. I just, see, this is one of those things where I can be like, just sit and think about what that means for a while. And it turns out that if you look up the term wit, that means the capacity for inventive thought and quick understanding, keen intelligence. That is exactly what we are looking for, right? Usually wit is considered to be something funny. It's not exactly, it's more about creating an inventive thought, and most particularly, deploying that thought into someone else's brain. Brevity is the soul of wit. Really, all that means is efficiency rules. The shorter you can say it, the clearest way, that is by far the best way to go. So that means any word or part of a sentence that does not serve a direct purpose is up for elimination. Efficiency is bigger than aesthetic, or rather, efficiency is the aesthetic. This is where the puzzle really comes from. This is where you have to shift around terms and parts of sentences and like commas and additional sentences and whatever that sauce is supposed to be that you're struggling with as you're writing, which is all normal, which is frustrating, and then, well, if you enjoy it a little bit, it can also be very fun. That is, in essence, where the key is. It's trying to get to the most compact, sexy version of what you want to say. Sexy also means positive. The negative things are just not sexy. So if you can avoid using negative, that's not even in here, I just thought of that, but that's important. If you can at all avoid using a negative, you should. Which again, all part of basic things to keep in mind. Finally, and I shit you not, this is one of the finest directives I have ever heard in writing. If a sentence that you are producing is longer than 3 lines, and that can be of any width, so sometimes you're making a presentation in PowerPoint or you're using a larger or smaller font as directed by the stupid form that you're filling. Any sentence that is larger than 3 lines is wrong, or it's 2 sentences, always. If you end up in a 4th line with 1 sentence, try to read it out loud to yourself, and we're going to do that, or I'm going to hold you to it. I hope that I get to that. Because, again, the reader, you have to help the reader think, right? The reader has an attention span, and that attention span only lasts as long as you can stretch it. And there is no hard rule per se. It can happen that you have a sentence that ends up in the 4th line, usually because you're using, not quotes, but brackets? Brackets. But my point is that if you can avoid it, you usually can, and you should. And if you want to fix it, usually you can find an and somewhere in that sentence. If you use more than 1 and in your sentence, that's more than 1 sentence. That sentence, the and, could be a period, a point. Exactly. Almost always. It's really that simple. So I always get confused when I get reports that include 4, 5, even 6 line long sentences, and I get to engage in the wonderful puzzle of retooling that into the 2 or 3 lines that it should be. Again, we're going to hopefully get to playing with that in a little bit. Someone says witbrood. Witte kool. I don't know what that means. That is there's some creative writing going on in the chat. Here for it. Sorry that I'm not more engaging with the chat. You guys, I'm so happy you're here. Witte brood, witte kool. If I can give you some background. But Clofargle Smash is probably like from outside. Or are you part of the team? I would be happy to get to know you. If there are no questions, we can go to the first exercise, which I hope that you will all enjoy doing with me, because I'll do it too. And I've done it already twice today. Clofargle is just doing some Dutch silliness with the witte brood, witte kool. God damn it, I wish I was another joke. Hey! Oh, it's Tanner. Hey, dude. Oh, man, you're learning Dutch? That's great, man. That's a noble endeavor. Anyway, let's get to the exercise. Writing a haiku is probably the most concise, complete writing exercise you can do. I am assuming everyone is familiar with the structure of the haiku. If you are not, please read the haiku that I wrote for you. Words in rigid shape, 5, 7, 5 syllables, a 3-phrase poem. A haiku, I've seriously written maybe even hundreds of haikus. I even once made a program to make Arnold Schwarzenegger quotes into haikus, because he speaks in short sentences and usually they can be molded into a 5-7-5 structure. I thought I was very funny at the time. I still think I was very funny. So safe to say I've spent a lot of time around a haiku. And it's a great writing exercise because it's very short. The structure is extremely rigid. If you do not, well, there's more versions of haikus, but the most popular one being this one has this very rigid structure that you must adhere to. There's no point otherwise. It's not a haiku. It is very easy to do. You can do it in minutes if you try. Or maybe I've just written too many haikus and maybe it'll take you a little bit longer, but don't be discouraged. It's a high focus exercise, right? A haiku, again, like any idea, can only be about one thing. And even if it is about multiple things, then it is about the single thing of multiple things. Yeah, I find that very exciting, I'm sorry. It's a complete writing process, so without further ado, lovelies, please take 5 minutes to haiku about Andre and share with the group. And I will keep time on my phone, and you will write a haiku. You can write a haiku about someone else or something else, but like that way you don't have to waste time on trying a different topic. Ooh, good Lord. Okay. Tanner has already written haikus. And Slaban has already delivered one. Yep, okay. Okay, all right. You guys, Streber. I will read it in
Dutch.
yes.
Streber.
We do. Streber.
Ah, also.
It's a Limburg thing. It's, we have Strebers in Dutch.
We also have Streber.
It's little. What is Streber in English? Does anyone know in the chat? You can tell
We
me.
don't have them.
Teacher's pet, a little bit. Yeah, the Streber is like more of a test monster. I don't know. Anyway, focus on the exercise. 5 minutes. Andre, you can write a haiku about yourself, I guess. Andre, you've already finished?
I don't know if it's the right format.
Is it, you don't know if it's the right format. You know that there's apps for that, right? Which is allowed, I think. You can use haiku checker dot.
That's my haiku about myself.
Wait, let me show you how I haiku.
Did I miss a syllable?
That's both misspelled and not in the correct format. Okay. 5, 7, 5.
Yeah.
5, 7, 5 syllables. Do you know what a syllable is?
Yeah, I know, but
If you don't, that's fine. That's not that doesn't make you a stupid person if you don't know what a syllable is. I might have explained. But Andre, for reference, 2 syllables, Andre. So, let's see. Oh, that's great. Tanner has already delivered one. Julia has delivered one. Whoa, that is creepy. How similar these are. Wait, because Julia Vela that's your Julia, right?
If it's with Epsilon, it's Julia.
Yeah, but this is not. This is Julia with the J.
Oh, okay, then it's Julia.
That is really a little bit creepy how similar, but I think, if I'm correct, that Julia does know how to stick to 5, 7, 5 syllables, so that's already one to you, Julia. Hi, good to see you, girl. This is fun. I'm gonna do all sorts of creative writing exercises now. More or less, you guys, have we finished? Doesn't have to be perfect. I don't exactly know how many viewers there are. I can't tell from the chat. But I'm guessing we can just start, and if you can finish yours, and if you still have yours to finish, you can. Oh, I love these. Oh, I'm going to start presenting them. Because this is so much fun. Okay, so first we had, let's see, where are you? Slaven. Sunny day, my cat is trying to take her recovery cone. The sound of a Skype message. Last one. Let's see. Sunny day, my cat is trying to take her recovery cone. That's 7. The sound of a Skype message. That's 7. Is there a different?
757 or 575?
575.
Okay, I did 757. Okay.
That's all right. Any structure is fine. There's any rule you give yourself in haiku is yours to follow, right? And that brings us to Andre's haiku, which is, Andre is a noodle, but not a poodle, strudel, nor a, but it's the haiku I got, and we have to be thankful for what we're given. Let's see, because I think the next one was Tanner. No more Blackberry. Andre starts Alibaba. Now we can party. Which I think that one's quite cool. Andre loves his cat. He also loves his noodles. Huh? 7. Oh, that's Julia. Yes, Andre loves his cat. He also loves his noodles. Cat and noodle, he loves. Like, these people are related in ways that they themselves can't even understand. And I think through the beauty of haiku, we've been able to display that today in front of us. The magic, the art happens in front of us. That's what I'm saying. Writing is fun. Don't ever let anyone tell you that writing isn't fun. It should be first and foremost. Mernas, Andre helps us code. Andre helps us code. Even when he gets really annoyed, then he go and smoke. Very clever. Uh-oh. Is the stream frozen? For real? Can someone check? Because I can't hardly wave at myself and see, really. Can anyone give me some feedback? All right. Sorry to keep you.
All working fine.
All right.
Let's see.
Lana, do you have a haiku?
Inside ice, outside burns as hell. What in between?
Ah. Wait, can I read it on the mic?
Yeah, but it's because I
Inside ice.
Inside ice.
Outside burns as hell. What in between? What in between? Okay, that's cool. What I'm saying is, even when the formatting is very simple, the directive can be extremely complicated to follow, even when you try, even when it is written on the board. It's okay. It's not, no one's going to take a finger. But this is just to illustrate that, like, language is a complicated thing. Even when you try to do something really simple, what you're doing effectively is solving a puzzle. And we have now done the microest version of a complete writing process. There it is in front of you. And I kid you not, writing a haiku, like sometimes I get the urge. Sometimes I just get the urge to haiku, and then I do. And it's fun. And I recommend that you do it as well, because it's fun. There is no other reason that is more important than writing a haiku every once in a while, just because it's fun. And interestingly, as a result of it, you also improve your writing style because you are focused on this beautiful little complete nugget. You have it. It's not a whole page or a story or something with sections. Well, there are sections, but there's 3 and they're very, very short, right? It's like 18 syllables in total. And you don't even have to check them yourself. You can go to the haiku checker and it'll check them for you. Although I do find it fun to finger count and see if it's correct. All right, thank you. What is the time? We are 45 minutes in. I'm already exhausted. I think this is more of a summary sheet. Thank goodness, because there's too much text on this sheet. Please take that as a point of interest as well. Not only is efficiency important, less, especially in the case of presentations, is actively more. I'm mirrored in this, so I have to do it like this. Less is more. And it takes a lot of time. Good writing is simply not done in a single sitting. All of our haikus could be improved structurally and also aesthetically if we spend more time developing them. All of us, regardless of our level of skill, can do that. And we would deliver a better haiku or 2 or 4 if we took more time to do so. And that is simply part of what you might call the struggle or the joy of writing. It simply isn't something that you can do in a single sitting. And there are at least 3 phases of consideration. That is, you have to first, of course, consider what you're going to write about. Then you write, then you evaluate what you wrote. But really, after that, you let someone else go through that process for you, and then you start again at the beginning. It's really up to you how many of these iterations you will need to do. They're kind of ongoing loops, and this is why novelists don't hardly ever finish a story, because it's simply, there's too many things to optimize, and you could go on forever. You have to learn to train yourself to find a balance there. But again, this is all kind of advanced, right? You're learning, and it's fine if you make a mistake if you're learning. So please consider, it's not going to be perfect at once. Please keep trying and take these layers of checking, of consideration seriously, right? Like you evaluate both on the language you use and the meaning it has. Those 2 are separate things as well. It's simply a lot of work. And you build the strength, you build accuracy, you build speed, you build agility, your ability to produce synonyms. If only I had a different word for the word ability. All of this sort of strengthens like a muscle. Really, it really does. If you can't think of a word that you are trying, if you can think of a synonym, but it's not quite the word you're looking for, just use the thesaurus. It is not a sin to use the thesaurus. Academics use the thesaurus. And it makes your writing better because it's interesting. It's interesting to produce a list of words as it relates to this one word that you chose. And you can just sit with the words and sort of just evaluate like, is this exactly what I'm trying to say? Or perhaps I can think of something better. Maybe I need to use a different term. All right. No questions in the chat? No, not right now. Cool. So, just to get to a few examples. Utilize or use pet peeve of the century. There is no use for the word utilize, ever. It is a word that is twice as long as the word use. It means the same thing. There is no alternative, better synonym. Those 3 letters are already getting you there. Utilize is a pointless word. You can use it if you want to be really fancy. If you know, the one instance in which it does matter is when you know that the reader is a pretentious dick. That's it. If you want to impress someone who you know to be impressed by complicated phrasing, then, and only then, is the word utilize functional. In all other cases, efficiency is everything. Shorter, simplicity, just keep it simple. Okay, so aesthetic, what I mean, and some people are going to be a little bit, little bit cringy at the word, because I'm going to use the word moist. The least preferred word, the least favorite word in the English language. I think maybe there's a new one now, but I think at least moist scores very high. So you have to be situationally aware of these things, right? Like, there is a purpose, even if the words are the same, right? Soggy and moist are synonyms. They're the same thing, but they express something slightly different. Soggy is like it might drip a little bit. It's drenched. It's unpleasant. There's something about the word soggy that you would prefer to avoid. That's just because of the meaning of that particular word. Moist, however, has an erotic connotation. And that is off-putting for different reasons for some people. I myself, fan of moisture.
Okay, but then if the weather has a lot of moisture in the air, do you use the word moist? Or
No, you say humid. Unless you want to, so if the weather outside, like Lana just asked, the weather outside can be moist. It can, that is correct.
I always say moist.
and that would be linguistically accurate. But if you want to avoid deploying what some people get, which is like it's an unpleasant shiver at the word moist, then you can do them the favor, do them the courtesy, unless, of course, you are willing to provocate, willing to engage in provocation. You might avoid using the word moist.
It depends on the massage.
Very depending on the massage. True. Any questions there? Julia too is triggered by the word moist into it. Contextual accuracy, again, thesaurus is life. You can do it right now. Just go to thesaurus.com or wherever you find it in your word processor or whatever app you use for writing. Just go and look up the word soggy and see all of the wonderful synonyms that it can come up with and consider them one by one, why they are similar or different. Again, finally, comprehensive accuracy. Okay, so I found one. I found a term that is mind-screeching in writing. I find it mind-screeching in its dullness, but like unforgiving accuracy. There are indeed instances in which the term external load-bearing structure is relevant, but those moments, those applications are few and far between, unless you are writing about unless you are trying to put in words what should be on a blueprint, because external load-bearing structures are mostly visible on blueprints. If you somehow need to put that in words, and you need to put this external load-bearing structure against another load-bearing structure which is not external, there is no point to ever use any other term than wall, right? Because wall covers the load. Wall is exactly the word that 9 times out of 10, unless you are specifically looking for something different, that you are looking for. And that is what you can trust the reader to understand as well. Unless the reader can be assumed to have a certain level of expertise about the specific topic that you are writing about, you cannot assume anything else. And therefore, it is always preferable, no matter how intelligent the reader, to resort to the simplest, least complicated version that you can go with. Don't install anything. Don't. Go away. So again, I'm being a little bit long-winded, I'm sorry, but the sequence of writing is incredibly important. You have to consider every word in the sentence, and the paragraph. The sentence is in the sentence. The paragraph is connected to the rest of the text, and the entire text means one thing that you are supposed to be expressing. And all of those steps matter, and if you miss one, it will show. It's okay, I'll fix it, but like that's basically my job, is to fix it. So the better you are at it, the easier it is for me. Very important. Okay, so moving on from single words and sentences to paragraphs. Paragraph, like a sentence, one topic, one purpose, one goal, only one. If there is a second goal, that's a different paragraph. Whichever I'm pointing to, it's fine. A paragraph can bring on multiple topics as they relate to one single main theme, right? So it can only give a little bit of extra form to whatever you're trying to explain. So that means, very simply, just in terms of base rules, that a paragraph cannot be shorter than 3 sentences. 3 is the minimal by which you express, because it has a beginning, middle, end structure, right? So you can, usually when you consider a paragraph, there is a paragraph above it, a paragraph below it. And because they express a different thing, they are spaced into paragraphs, right? So the first sentence ideally leads from the previous sentence, right? Then the middle sentence explains the meat, right? It can be more than one sentence, but minimally it has to be one in the middle. That's the meat of that paragraph. And then the last sentence already sort of leads subtly to the next one. Again, pretty abstract. But just if you take nothing else away from this, a paragraph is 3 sentences, no longer than 8. If you present me with a block of text, I'm goldfishing. I'm not going to be able to concentrate on what you're writing. I need parsed sections so I know I'm directed, right? Like any reader should be directed to understand exactly what you were trying to say, nothing else. So wall of text, I'm assuming everyone knows TLDR, too long, didn't read. Easy. So this is something that I've seen people do regularly. When you advise people to create paragraphs, what they usually do is go, okay, 1, 2, 3 sentence, paragraph, 1, 2, 3 sentence, paragraph, 1, 2, 3 sentence, paragraph. That is not how it's done, and I'll know. Huh? That's very... there's a purpose to why you're trying to say what you're trying to say, and if you're not saying that, you need to sculpt it more. You need to, like, again, it's not easy, it's a lot of hard work, but I would like for you to do it, and then I'll help you do it. It's manageable, and definitely you will improve with time. But don't be afraid to like sculpt and look for, ask the question, what, per every unfortunate minuscule little section of your writing, what does it mean? Does it serve a purpose? Can I say this more efficiently? Thank you. One way to avoid inefficiency is to avoid nebulous writing. Nebulous, cloud-like, right? That's a nebulous. So what people in writing sometimes term as word salad, when you are speaking just to speak, sort of to keep the argument going, but it's long since lost any additional value. That would be word salad. If you write word salad, you will lose the reader, unless you are dealing with a reader who's like waiting for the bus or something, and they'll just go, and then it'll be fine. That is not how you acquire grants, though, right? Like, you can't confuse the reader out of paying attention to you. So if the writing is unclear, and you can check this, not just yourself, but like showing someone else, does this make sense to you? And like, a very important thing here, the point is not to ask, does this make sense to you, but what does this mean? Could you tell me what is written here? How do you understand it? Because you're asking this person in good faith, right? Like, you're assuming that they're not going to cause you, give you a dishonest answer for some reason, right? Like, they should be, if your writing is good, then another person can pick it up and read it back to you and understand exactly what you were supposed to mean. Yeah? So, like, that's, again, Build a skill like a muscle. It's not going to be something that goes right the first time, and that's completely okay. The point of writing clearly and confidently, accurately, with style and consideration is to inspire confidence. If you can say what you mean exactly right, you know what you're talking about. If you can cut all of the nebulous nonsense that does not go with it, and there is quite a bit of nebulous nonsense in business, right? So the reader can be assumed to be sort of weathered a little bit by word salad. I guarantee you that that reader is impressed if they get, boom, 4 good paragraphs. This is what I mean. This is what it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Done. That is not something that, even for me, I have tremendous trouble doing that, right? It takes hours, a lot of hard work. Worth it, though. Worth it, because as you're doing it, you're also helping yourself understand what you're writing about. As you are thinking about it, you will notice that, oh, wait, maybe there's something missing here. Maybe I have to rephrase something. Maybe I left an entire section out of my idea. Maybe I have to reconsider, ask a question about it, just because the more I think about it, the more I might consider I want to do something differently. And that's the point, right? Like, you want to arrive at this grand institution, wherever you're going to meet whoever's going to write, give you a whole bunch of money for the product that you're proposing. You have to be able to explain exactly what you mean. And they have to understand exactly what you mean. If it is different, they are giving the money to something they don't understand. And that's a really bad thing. That's a really bad thing, actually, that we should, yeah, okay, let's say that I think I'm confidently able to say that we've so far been able to avoid that. But I would really like to keep that as a base rule of, like, please don't let the grant controllers be misdirected by our intention, because that can be a real problem.
You want to take a short break? It's 5 o'clock.
It's 5 o'clock. Want to take a short break? Yes, we're also halfway there. So let's take 10 minutes, get yourself a glass of water, go to the bathroom. 5?
Yeah, short.
Aide. Okay. Okay, I will mute myself for a second. If you have questions, please write them down in the chat, and I will be back in 5 minutes with slightly less dry voice. And we're back. And we're back. We're going to give it another half minute for everyone to recompose themselves. I'm sure that at least several were online, which proves my point. The internet is the most stimulating thing ever. Keep that in mind as we continue. I hope to, well, I am actually halfway. So it might be that I'm able to finish, but we have 2.5 more exercises, so we might not, and I'll just finagle whatever's left into the, go ahead, man, into the second tutorial, which I think might be useful. Okay, so quick recap, because we're immediately going to the next exercise. Let me put that in the chat. What do you remember? What is the most important thing so far that you've picked up? Give me the top 3 list of things that you've picked up so far, if you're back and you can. Andre, please give me the 3 most important things that I've mentioned so far in writing.
Efficiency.
Efficiency, yes! Clearly, that's 1. Number 1, efficiency. 2.
I'll let somebody else do it.
Okay, Lana.
Clear.
Clarity. Clarity. Oh, yes. Okay, can you come up with a 3rd important thing about writing that I've discussed so far?
Yeah, I note before queen intelligence when we make the programs.
Didn't quite understand. Keen. Yes, wit. What you mean is wit. Keen intelligence. Exactly. You remember the definition. That's great. As I put it on this. Yes. People are reading my sheets. I'm so happy. Great. So with that, those 3 things in mind, perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I wouldn't have thought of wit, so that's great. Please, let's try and catch that run-off sentence. This, in front of you, you see 1 sentence, and I am going to attempt to read it in 1 breath. All the reporting data about the system itself, which is made public, is high-level data about, for example, electricity savings or patterns in Maastricht or the Netherlands, where relevant governing bodies or research institutes can monitor trends, make predictions, or drill down in terms of general divisions like average kitchen versus living room consumptions, or hot water versus heating, or in Maastricht or Amsterdam, for example. I don't think I need to explain anymore why that sentence is too long. Please fix it for me. You have 3 minutes. It's in the sheet that I've sent through to you before, but if you can type really quickly, you can just take it off. I'm not going to check it, is my point. If you finish within the 5 minutes that you have, please paste your result in the chat. I will do it as well, actually, on paper. Oh, thank you. Pencil, more reliable than a pen.
Should we just cut it or even summarize it?
Whichever is preferable to you. If you want to parse it, I recommend that you parse it first, break it up into sections, and then look for the parts that are relevant information and combine those into the new sentence, or 2 or 3. I have turned off my microphone for a second. I am very sorry. We'll give it another minute. But if you finish, please feel free to type what you have in the chat. Very happy that people are paying attention. Seeing very good suggestions in the chat about what's most important about this little tutorial. Julia, very good. Okay, so these are now... Oh, everyone, please take a good look. Because even, well, of course, it's not parsed like that for everyone, but I think, if I'm estimating correctly, I have the narrowest width of writing in the chat, and I can tell that there are no sentences longer than 3 lines in what Julia just posted, and I love it. All right. So Julia, I'm just going to repeat it out for the people in the room. Julia made the following. All the reporting data about the system itself, which is made public, is high-level data. For instance, electricity savings or patterns in Maastricht or Netherlands, where relevant governing bodies or research institutes can monitor trends. Okay, so that's one sentence. They can also make predictions or drill down general divisions. You could compare different rooms, different areas, or hot water versus heating. Let's have a short look. Let's have a short look at that last, no, second to last. We see the Oxford comma appear, which I think is correct. Yes, it is correct, because you're starting a new summary, which good going, Julia. Mine is shorter, but maybe mine is less comprehensive. Anyone else? Do you have a finished one, Lana?
All the publicly available reporting data about the system is highly level data, full stop.
Mm-hmm.
For example, electricity savings or patterns in Maastricht or Netherlands, where relevant governing bodies or research institutions can monitor trends and make
Okay, so what I just took out was not the second mic. I'm very sorry. I killed whatever we were supposed to be doing on the stream. I'm very sorry about that momentum. My point is, okay, so to quickly summarize, Lana's was more comprehensive but longer. Alexandre's was very comprehensive, surprisingly efficient. Like you really took the assignment very well. Maybe you need a different, a little bit of work on the phrasing, but it was effective. It was good. And my version is as follows, which I will read now a third time. My apologies to the people in the room. All relevant data or use patterns can be compared or monitored per unit, building, or region. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that covers whatever is supposed to be covered in this. All relevant data or use patterns can be monitored and compared per unit. Compared or monitored, compared, you can switch it out. Building or region. Because I think there's already a little bit of repetition in what's being summarized here in the runoff sentence. Let's have a quick look at some of the base issues that might, like even without reading it, might occur with this exercise. One, of course, the sentence is far too long, right? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that 7? Yes, 7 lines of text for one sentence. Another issue that you might notice as something to keep in mind is you can just count, even if the sentence is within the 3-line limit, you can count the number of commas. In this case, there are 2. If there are 2 commas in a sentence, that means there is a little sub-sentence within the sentence. It can be nested, sort of, if you're a programmer, which is fine, but it has to, again, serve a purpose that relates to the sentence it is a part of. If it is not there, it doesn't have to be there, it can go somewhere else. So where relevant governing bodies or research institutes can monitor trends is what is here in between the 2 commas. I see why you might do that, but please, in proofreading, catch this and like if you could do this puzzle before I have to do it, that would be great. And if you manage to parse it, even if you just manage to parse it up a little bit, for me, then that puzzle is much easier to solve. You know, you see, I'm cheating, right? Because I did this relatively quickly, and I was like, oh, that's really easy for me, right? That's not easy for me. I found this example because I was trying to decipher it before. I've literally done this exercise already. That's why it's easy for me, not because I'm so good. Yeah?
Sorry, you managed to reduce that part that you were just talking about with one word. Which word did you use? Relevant governing bodies or research institutes?
I think the word might be monitored.
Monitored, okay.
Or like compared and monitored, I think. But I mean, I can put it in the chat as well, and that can be preserved for the ages. Can't I not? Do I not have access to the chat? Balls! So well, I would have to log in myself and then do it that way. Anyway, please, if you want to look for the specific thing again, look. Wait a minute. In theory, you should be able to play the audio section, and then it should be quiet, and then exactly where it's quiet, that's where this is. Never mind. Sorry, that's a weird thing that I said. Sorry. Let's move on, I think, unless there's more questions. Anyone have more questions? No? Some is asking, don't we lose too much information? What exact information is lost, Sam?
Well, can I answer?
Andre wants to answer that question. Let me get to Andre so that you can all hear it too. You can, we can go back. Okay. He can operate the mic himself. Okay, go.
So this section was about the data that part of the grant we have to make public.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have to specify which data we are making public to whom. Okay. So what Sam is saying, we are losing too much information in very short description that you put. That's the information that you cut off. So when I was thinking how to fix this sentence, actually I would start with the research institutes, governing bodies and research institutes have access to public high-level data, full stop. And then, for example, what you just said, in your sentence makes sense to me.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you, I can concur that for sure that there is no mention of governing bodies or research institutes right now, because I didn't think that was like, this is something that we might have a conversation about, but for peace and goodwill, and also because it's pretty accurate. I can concede that it would be nice to at least mention governing bodies in the little section as you just presented it. Julia also thinks that's useful to specify. That's great. Anything else? Any other remarks? Any other solutions to this issue? Have I lost the room? No, I don't think so. Engaged writing is active. Again, I'm just going to bring that back up again. Work is better than working or worked, which isn't to say that you never use working or worked, just that if you can use work instead, there you go. That's like, you can, in my imagination, the reader is sort of like an elf who just kind of leaps from little word to little word. You don't have to rest your eyes for too long on anything in particular. You can just beep, 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 go through it. And short words, even physically shorter words, are very useful for that. Again, as I've mentioned at the start, avoid the past tense unless you are specifically referring to the past event, of an event that happened in the past. And even then, you're only using it as a contrast to the current, right? So that's a nice way to use it as a sort of a schism between then and now. The revolution is right here in front of us, which, you can breathe a little bit of that air into the writing, as long as you don't say, this is the revolution and the greatest thing that ever happened in the history of grant writing, because for sure that's not true. And even if it were, would you want to be the one to assess that? The person who's reading it should be assessing that, shouldn't they? All right. No further questions. Moving on. Okay, now this is going to be a little bit quicker, so maybe we will finish in time. I did something that I hope will help my Eastern European or Baltic friends a lot. It's actually not something that I could explain until I looked it up, but I did look it up and I can explain it because I get it now. And I didn't know that before. It's just something you do, right? The articles. The articles are just a part of English language fluency. You use the, a, or none, neither. And that is exactly where it becomes complicated. I think everyone in the chat is able to ascertain when you use the or a, right? Like the is specific to this, right? This is my phone. This is the phone that belongs to Eline. It can also be a phone that belongs to Eline, but that would be a phone in the array of all phones, right? So A is general, as it is also written in the sheet right in front of you. But then, sometimes, you're allowed to not use an article at all. And that is where it becomes really, really confusing. I felt it was quite confusing. But really, what it comes down to, the little trick that you do, is that you have to ascertain whether the thing you are mentioning is countable and whether it's a multiple. Especially if it's an uncountable multiple, or just uncountable in general, then you are able to leave the article out. I love apples. I love the apple, specifically this apple that's in front of you. In the case of the concept of apples, you don't need any connective tissue in between. You can just say, I love apples. I'm meaning apples in general. And you can't really say a apples either, right? Because that's, well, again, that's one of those things that you intuitively know not to do, and I think everyone on the chat also knows not to do that. But you see how this game works, right? The rules are very simple, but the game is in comprehension. So if I understand what I'm writing, what I'm referring to grammatically, which is a large part of meaning, unfortunately. Like, I so wish that that weren't the case. I wish that like meaning could just be conveyed without grammar, but that is simply not true. So the application of the article as it should be presented correctly, it makes a huge difference in how well you're able to show that, again, you confidently understand what you're talking about. It doesn't matter if I have to find articles for the rest of my life, right? I don't have a problem correcting them as I read, and it's not anything I can take a finger for. But the exercise of making sure that you are using the correct article you need in the sentence you are writing makes a huge difference in your end-all comprehension of the text itself. So I know it's super annoying because like what other stupid language except Dutch does that, but it is worth pursuing to use the correct article, to at least consider whether or not you are doing so. Let's see. I don't really feel like going into the entire series of how this rule really works, because you can repeat it to yourself quite easily, right? Like all of this is going to be online. Just pause it and look at it for a second if you have a particular part that you would like to repeat to yourself. Or Google it. I'm sure there's also great videos about it. But it is something, again, like any muscle, you improve with it over time. And if you're Eastern European, that's not your fault. It's not natural to you that you wouldn't do that. But practice makes perfect. And in the case of English grant writing, really, really worth it. Another peeve. And so on, etc. Either the thing you want to say is important enough to mention, or you leave that out. You finish the sentence when it is finished. You don't leave stuff to the imagination of the author. You control what the author is supposed to think. And so on just opens up a whole gray just space. And unless you want the reader to be in that space, to sort of wander off in their imagination as to what might be captured under and so on, etc., just leave it out. It's fine. Usually it's also implied that you're not giving the entire set that you're referring to, right? You don't have to clarify an entire concept into the minutiae. It can be a given. Again, this is not an exact science. This is a little bit of a dark art. But as a general rule, the use of and so on, I can't find, I'm very hard pressed to find a good purpose for it, which isn't to say it doesn't exist, just means it's a little bit more rare than I regularly find it. Again, one for my Eastern European friends, that versus which. Those two are not the same. They are very similar. They are sisters. They are not twins. They don't mean exactly the same thing. Which is a reference to something that is mentioned before, usually, and that doesn't necessarily have to do that. Again, that is not something that is easy to put forward, but what I can tell you, and this is true, the word that in common English should occur more frequently than the word which. That means that if you are writing and you want to know, wait, am I using that or which too much? You can check that by using Control F. Just count, just see how many there are. And if there's more of one than the other, then maybe it's time to go check, because there's a few of those whiches, actually that's. And that, again, is just something that helps the reader sort of fluently understand what you're talking about. So yeah, Control F to verify that is bigger than which. Very, very simple, you don't even have to think about it. And again, I'm going to mention a few things that are simple, but there's a reason that they occur. That there's a reason people make that mistake. That you don't do that on purpose, and I don't expect perfect application of those rules. But like, understand that it's important to practice them. Just practice. Then or than. Let's do a micro exercise. Then refers to time. then with an A refers to size. And hilariously, apparently, PowerPoint thinks my use of then is grammatically incorrect. That's funny. I suppose that's because there's a dash next to it. That's probably highlighting it for some reason. But if you have time and size, that's the only question. When you are applying then or than, you will always figure it out. There's literally those two fall apart one or the other beautifully. Except in, of course, the example that I found. So, please, people in the room, people in the chat, feast your eyes. If you are a native English speaker, that would be cheating, not allowed. But if you are not a native English speaker, please tell me in the exercise below on the page, I arrived later than Dave. What is the letter that I am looking for on the X? Again, native English speakers excluded. Is it an A? Or is it an E? An A for Andre. Yeah. Okay. Does everyone agree? Okay. Okay, very happy. Seeing some, yeah, okay. The correct answer has also been given in, and I'm not seeing any mistakes, so this is flawless. 10 for 10, everyone. Wonderful. Great to see that everyone sort of instinctively seems to get that rule, because that is a very, you know, I would assume that if anyone was struggling, that they would not be able to figure out the difference in the example, but they did. I love it. All right. IE or EG. That's a very sneaky one. Even academics do that one wrong. Yeah, it's an example. If you are using an example, then you are mentioning a few of the parts of the concept that you are referring to, which is great. So usually an example, not always, but usually EG refers to a summary of sorts, whereas EG refers, or IE, sorry, now I did it wrong, IE refers to this and only this. So usually that would not be a list because it's very contained, the thing that you're referring to. It can be a list, but this is much less likely. It's not something that's super important, but people appreciate. Like IE and EG both are sort of commonly understood to mean an example of something, but people decidedly, categorically use them wrong, and you now know the difference between the two, so you'll never have to make that mistake again. Mwah! Beautiful, because I do notice, and I see, and I appreciate. Again, if you want to see the list of these, again, you are free to look at the video. I'm not going to go through all of them. We have limited time left, and to be perfectly honest, I'm exhausted. Okay, now this is much more tricky. Avoid repetition, but don't. If you have introduced a term within a sentence or even a paragraph, usually if you are writing efficiently, you only need to use it once and it'll be clear. Whenever you refer back to it, you don't even have to use a synonym per se. If you write well, usually you won't have to repeat the term. It's very unusual that you must. However, if you do fall into repetition, and maybe you even saw me do it on the chat earlier before the tutorial, I think I used the haiku twice in short succession in one sentence, and that's annoying. All right, like I do that regularly, and every time I catch myself, like, oh, come on, like other people are going to read this. But you know, here you are, and I did it myself just now. Not easy to catch every time, but if you can, and this again is something that, like, the weird thing is that when I'm looking for a certain word, I can, like, with my weirdly trained brain, sort of highlight them from the page. But this is something that you learn by practice, not something that you can necessarily do in one go. But it's super useful to train, to see whether or not a word is repeated too many times, more often than you appreciate. Of course, Control F, again, beautiful. You can just Control F, whatever word you're looking for. In my case, usually I end up looking for the word data. And ideally, if I look on a page or on a section of a grant, I want to see it sort of scattered sparingly. Like it should be there, but it shouldn't be one sentence after the next that I see it. So it's almost like a graphic exercise. So repetition is a difficult term to deal with in writing, because of course, like everything you write serves one single purpose. In essence, you really explain, especially in a grant, you explain the same thing over and over again from different vantage points. And you must, right? Like there are different aspects of the idea that you're proposing that are important to whatever institution you're applying to fulfill that need that you might have. If they can't do that, of course, there's no grant. So there's always multiple angles to highlight. And this makes it especially relevant to more or less be sparse with the repetition. Yeah, and especially, yeah, I do agree with what I wrote here, especially in innovation, functional, comprehensive writing is very important. Again, innovation in and of itself, business almost in the greater aspect of it, is very nebulous, very full of people who are making a lot of steam without a lot of substance. And of course, we want to deliver the substance. That makes people happy. That makes me happy. Let's see. Yeah, needless repetition will lose your readers. Use Control F to fix that. We can do another exercise. We can also not do another exercise because we are very tired. I am.
Unfortunately, I have to go.
All right. All right. Bear with me. We're almost finished. Counting. I'm bringing it back because things were getting a little bit too complicated. I'm bringing it back to a very simple place. Again, just like a sentence shouldn't run over 3 lines, there's a couple of other things that you can simply check just without even reading the context of what you've written. So every sentence can have 1 comma. If it has 2 commas, that has to be for a very specific purpose. It has to be like a sub-sentence within the sentence. If that is not the case, your sentence is 2 sentences. So that's just offhandedly 99% of the time that will be effective. Same goes for the word and. You can only use one and per sentence. If you use 2, if I find you using 2, I find that you are writing a list. And lists I have another sheet about, which is coming up next. But you can't, commas are a way of extending a sentence. If I see too many of them, I'm going to simply not cognitively, just in my mind, I'm just not going to be able to absorb the entirety of what is being written. If I have to deal with a list of 6 items in the middle of a sentence, I do not remember how that sentence started, and by the time it ends, I don't know what the list was about. Just give me the word that describes the list. Trust the reader that they will be able to do that. And if they can't, you have to check. This is a mitigatory thing. So ands and lists and commas, a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. Let's see. Summary, you can include them 4 items max in a written sentence. If you have more items, and even usually if you have 4 items already, just list them underneath one another. Just give me the overview, the different. Put a little dot or a line or whatever you need to indicate to the reader that I'm making a list now. I'm reporting a couple things. You need to know this before we continue. But if you put them side to side, then really that breaks my concentration. And that will guarantee break the concentration of whoever is reading your work. So that's an easy thing to avoid. Again, that and which, keep a close eye on those 2. And that brings us to lists. We are not going to go over the entirety of why I would prefer, I've just explained basically why I would prefer that you solve this block of text as this block of text. It's literally the same text, right? I've just reformatted it to contain the 2 lists that it contains. And I think You can disagree with me. Take your time, read it, think about what you think about it, and if you do disagree, do tell me why you disagree. But there's no line limit. There's a character limit. There's no line limit to a grant application. So there's no end to the amount of enters that you can theoretically use. So please feel free to use them. And there we go. Proofreading. Same as mentioned before, it's programming, there's phases, trust yourself, allow yourself to engage in the process, you can't do it all in one go, step away from it, give it to someone else, look at the overall shape of the text, look at the length of the text, look at the repetition of the phrasing, look at your that's versus your whiches, look at your articles, look at how your different paragraphs follow one another and whether that bulges out into exactly the thing that you want to say and nothing else. There you go. If you want to do another exercise, you can do it on your lonesome. I will not be doing it during this session, but here's another little piece for you to chew on if you like. It's also in the file that you've downloaded before the session, I think. Any tips on using parentheses? That's the next session. I will go into parentheses. I can explain very accurately, I think, when they apply and when they don't. Although I might also be guilty of overusing them every once in a while. Shout out to all the people, Slav, shout out to all the people who use parentheses because we think that our point is not clear enough. Yeah, that's true. Okay, good point, Julia. I will bring that up in the next session. Let me know if there's any other stuff that I should include in the next session as well. Finally, little tricks. The biggest trick, apart from the thesaurus and Control F. All right, Control Find is everything. So if you are working on a document that has been altered by someone else and they've tracked their changes, you will guaranteed lose a couple of spaces. And that is mega annoying because you accept the changes as you go, sort of bloop, 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 you can do that really quickly, but sometimes there's a little space that is missed out, and that almost always leads to little misspellings, little errors, little finagly little things that you don't need to think about because you can find them if you check for them at the end. For instance, have you ever considered Control Fing for double spaces? Oh yes. I'm still like, it gives me a little bit of a shudder, like, ooh, it's so good. Because like, I'm super annoyed, right? When I leave extra space, because sometimes in the middle of a sentence you're thinking and you just hit space again for no reason, but it's there now. And like either your eye sees it or like the word finds it for you, but it doesn't always. So at the end, Control F, single space, double space, space period, double period, all of these you can check and remove for free. Just remove all, because they never apply. There's not a single instance in which that is useful. So you can just guarantee that that can go. That continues into shitty little misspellings. Apps Force without a capital F. That's just how you write Apps Force, so that has to be in there. One that I find that I run into particularly often is the term adoptable versus adaptable. Those are two different words. They're both correct words, but only one applies. And the word that you're looking for is usually adaptable with an A. Sometimes words need to be capitalized because they are abbreviations of some sort. So again, you can Control F and then replace all, and then capital EORC, and then all capital TORC, switch, done. Never think about it again. Let's see, Julia asks, I'd be interested in getting your take on how to read a piece of text quickly and efficiently. Does better reading skill go hand in hand with better writing skill? For sure, but the exercise of writing is a sort of, like, if you've read 4 authors, then you know that they have 4 different writing styles, and they have little idiosyncrasies. I'm sorry to use that word, but like things that are unique to them and how they write. And those little things, when you consider them, serve a purpose. There are always functional tricks for what they're trying to show, and you have to develop that for yourself. There is nothing I can impart on you that I can deploy in your head that will make you a better writer. The act is absolutely 100% in doing, and if you do, when you do, I hope you all do, then please take what I've written here as a little guide, but I don't expect anyone to be able to efficiently apply everything that is written here. It is really all about the muscle. And I think Grammarly, oh yes, Slabine also, very good. And I think that that'll be it for today. Parentheses, next session. Let me know if there's anything else I can prepare for you, and I'd be happy to see you next time. Thank you.